I'll be busy taking care of the baby soon. I won't be able to come home for a while, so don't miss me too much, okay?" My husband's words cut through me as he packed his things. I stood there, numb, watching him. He seemed unaffected by my feelings, casually laughing and humming as he asked about our son's baby bottle. Except the baby he referred to wasn't ours. It was the child he had with his younger mistress. Yes, this man had abandoned me and our son. My name is Linda, a 42-year-old caregiver. I work part-time, so my income isn't great, but I'm currently studying to become a certified nursing assistant. My family consists of my husband and our son. My husband is 45 years old and works as a manager in a reasonably large company. He has been there for many years. He used to have a reputation as a womanizer, causing me countless tears. I confronted him multiple times, asking who mattered more to him, me or the other women. But despite the pain, I never left him because I loved him deeply. After our son was born, my husband settled into his job, and I balanced work, housekeeping, and parenting as time flew by. Robert, our son, turns 18 this month. He's worked hard through a rebellious phase and is now on the brink of high school graduation, striving to get into his dream college. The thought of him leaving home worries us as parents, though he's grown into a tall, handsome young man poised on the threshold of adulthood. As Robert focused on his college exams, there were evenings when my husband came home late. Initially, I attributed it to his demanding job, but unanswered calls and messages fueled my suspicions. Evidence accumulated, perfume on his suits, stray hairs in the car, that left me doubting, yet I lacked the courage to confront him. Then, during a family dinner one evening, my husband, flushed from alcohol, remarked, "Robert has really grown up, hasn't he? I still feel like a kid sometimes. But you've grown so much taller since middle school, and your face has matured, hasn't it?" Robert, visibly embarrassed by the attention, awkwardly scratched his head. My husband glanced at us casually and remarked, "So you don't need your old man anymore, huh?" "What do you mean?" I was taken aback by the sudden shift in conversation, exchanging puzzled looks with Robert. My husband finished his beer in one gulp and dropped the bombshell. "Well, the thing is, my girlfriend is pregnant." The room fell silent. Girlfriend? Pregnant? It was incomprehensible. I let out a nervous laugh. "You must be joking. You've had too much to drink." "No, it's true. I've been seeing her for a year now. I intended to keep it quiet, but it looks like we're expecting a baby." I stood up abruptly, shielding Robert's ears. He stared at his father, bewildered. "Robert, please go back to your room." "What? This might be the last time we're all together." I haven't had much chance to talk to Robert lately. Let him stay a bit longer, my husband said casually. "How can you say that? I don't understand how you think it's appropriate for our son to hear this. And what do you mean by the last time?" Anger surged through me, and I raised my voice. In a protective reflex, I pulled Robert close in a tight hug. He's already stressed with his upcoming exams. I don't want him involved in this kind of conversation. My husband remained unfazed, continuing, "Well, I won't be coming home for a while because I'll be helping her raise the baby, you know." My head spun at his words. So he had a mistress and was expecting a baby with her, dropping this bombshell on us only as the birth approached. I couldn't comprehend my husband's actions. I felt like everything was unraveling. Over our more than 20 years together, there were times I resented him, but I always found solace in seeing him as a devoted father to Robert. Did he truly desire his mistress so intensely that he was willing to discard all the trust and years we had built together? "Well, that's how it is. I'm going to her place this weekend, so I'd better start getting ready," he announced, beginning to pack his things into a backpack. I stood there, feeling like a hole had been torn in my heart. "Hey, do we still have the baby bottles Robert used?" Despite the somber mood, my husband was smiling. I shook my head silently. There was one thing left, not saved for him and his mistress, but for when Robert grew up, so my husband and I could reminisce about our parenting journey, praising each other and sharing memories. My husband muttered something about it being a waste and headed to the bedroom to organize his clothes. Did he just abandon us? Robert whispered tearfully, and I couldn't find the words to deny. 3 days later, my husband left for his mistress's place. When I confronted him, crying that I had once believed in him, he replied, "I always wanted another child, but you were always so busy, weren't you? And while we were caught up in all that, we just kept getting older." I knew we couldn't have another one. I forced a laugh, the pain cutting deep. Robert held back tears, glaring at his father while gently rubbing my back. What's with that look? By the time I'm back, I won't be here anymore. Are you okay with that? You're an adult now, right? You've lost that childlike charm and aren't as cute anymore. I've heard my girlfriend's baby is a girl, so I might end up liking her more than you. Robert lunged at his father. He flinched momentarily, but then met Robert's glare head-on. She's so young and cute, unlike you guys. I'm really looking forward to our future together. Yeah, I get it now. You're the worst dad. At least now Mom and I know where we stand. I joined Robert, finding my voice. Know that there won't be a home for you to return to anymore. My husband, his expression annoyed, shrugged off Robert's grip and departed without a farewell. Robert stood by me, supporting me as I felt my strength wane. We didn't sit idle after learning about my husband's mistress. We had already begun planning our next steps. About 2 weeks later, my husband called. He chuckled, mentioning how smoothly things were going with raising their daughter, who he described as adorable. He even sent a photo of his mistress holding the child, igniting a simmering rage within me. Unknowingly, he provided us with evidence. I saved the photo and began recording our conversation, amazed at his recklessness. Then, right on cue, his mistress took the phone and started talking. Are you the wife? I'm sorry I've taken your husband all for myself, but we have a child together now, so it can't be helped, right? Well, yes, raising a child can be tough. I'm glad you understand. When your husband first mentioned you, I thought you were just a weak person who couldn't do anything but cry. But that's clearly not who you are. So that's what he had been saying about me to his mistress. Half a year ago, those words would have cut deeply, but now they left me numb. My love for my husband had long since faded. You knew my husband was married with a child, and yet you pursued him anyway. I didn't know at first. He never wore his wedding ring when we were together, so when he finally told me, it was a surprise. But it didn't change my feelings for him. We're meant to be together forever. It's a good thing they're both so clueless. This would serve as evidence that the mistress knew my husband was married and still continued their relationship. While her words were infuriating, the potential payoff was significant. It would have been more challenging to exact revenge if she appeared genuinely remorseful and troubled by the unplanned child. I wished them both well and hung up. 2 years had passed since that day. Then I saw that familiar number on my phone screen. Taking a deep breath, I answered, Hey, how have you been? I'm on my way home now, so make sure the house is clean, okay? Didn't I tell you there's no home for you to return to? What are you trying to prove? My husband sounded exasperated. Okay, I admit leaving abruptly was wrong, but I can't abandon her to raise the child alone, can I? You're a mother too, you should understand. He stood up, doesn't get it. He hasn't changed since that day. Maybe that's for the best. It confirms that Robert and I made the right choice in taking care of ourselves. I think you misunderstand. There literally is no house for you to return to. I sold it. I heard my husband gasp on the other end of the line. 2 years ago, that day, I made a decision to confront my oblivious husband with everything that had transpired. My son and I grappled with the daunting task of removing him from our lives for good. Amidst it all, I realized the risk of him wanting to return and resume where he left off. After everything he had done and said, living with him seemed impossible. Even our once shared home felt tainted to me now. When I voiced my turmoil, Robert calmly posed the question, Isn't this house in your mom's name? Yes, it's the house I inherited from my grandfather. We renovated it and moved in. In that case, why don't we sell it? Robert's bold suggestion took me by surprise, but selling the house meant my husband could never return to it. The proceeds would also fund legal assistance and a private investigator for the divorce. Robert had been saving diligently, ensuring we could start anew without financial worries. I agreed to Robert's plan and began preparations. Robert intensified his studies, earning acceptance to a distant college, while I pursued certification as a nursing assistant. With higher earning potential, I could work anywhere. Thus, we sold the house. We had obtained permission from my grandfather, who had taken on a parental role after my parents passed away. When I explained the situation, he was outraged. My grandparents contributed a portion of their savings, urging us to use it for a fresh start. Despite my hesitation, they insisting there was no reason for them to hold onto the money at their age, and pressed an envelope filled with cash into my hands. Their kindness moved me to tears. And so, we started our new life in the state where Robert's college was located. Given your lack of interest in our lives during Robert's exam preparations, you probably have no idea where we reside now. You can't bluff me like that." My husband's voice rose in panic. "If you think it's a lie, you can come and see for yourself. We're busy. We're hanging up now." "Hey, wait." At that moment, Robert, who had been quietly observing, took the phone from me. "Dad, remember what you said? That we don't need you anymore? We agree. We don't need a father who abandons us for his mistress." With a steely tone, Robert's words brought my husband to tears. "Please wait. I know I messed up, but don't abandon me." Taking the phone back from Robert, I prepared to deliver the final blow. "You may not agree to a divorce, but we're moving forward with the preparations regardless. And did you know that alimony payments for fathering the child during our marriage can be nearly double the standard amount? You better start preparing for that." Without waiting for his response, I ended the call. Immediately, my husband tried calling back, but I declined. I refused any further stress. From now on, he would bear the financial burden of raising a child with his mistress and paying me alimony. My husband lacked real skills to support himself, and I had always cleaned up after him. He left dirty dishes and scattered laundry, rarely helping with household chores and only occasionally taking out the trash, boasting when he did. I couldn't envision him and his young lover enduring for long. After speaking my mind, a sense of relief washes over me and I take a deep breath. Robert looks concerned. "I'm okay. I said what needed to be said, and I feel much better now. Let's go out and have something you enjoy today," I say, mustering a smile despite my weariness. He still appears worried but tries to appear cheerful for my sake. I find my sons debating between steak, sushi, or pizza utterly endearing. We face challenges, but let's create more happy memories together. This new place may be unfamiliar, but Robert and I will manage just fine. I need to help him become more independent. When we moved in together, he mentioned how glad he was to still enjoy my home-cooked meals since he's not great at cooking. But moving forward, whether he has friends over or even a girlfriend, I'll need to make space for them too. Robert is such a caring child, always concerned about me. I worry his girlfriend might eventually find it overwhelming. Teaching him to cook will be essential for his independence, adding to my already busy schedule. With my husband gone, I no longer feel lonely. Thinking about our future, I laugh, feeling refreshed. Knowing he's completely out of my life allows me to live with a clear conscience for the rest of my days. I'm living with an elderly lady. Isn't it obvious I should help out? This is just a penalty game, a bit of fun. There's no need to make a big deal out of it, right? So that's your attitude. I see. If you both feel that way, I have my own plans too. My name is Naomi. I'm currently living alone in the city, far from my childhood home. It takes about an hour by car to get there, which makes frequent visits difficult. I manage to go back maybe once a year. Last New Year, for example, I was too busy with work to make the trip. But this year, I was able to make the journey home. I was looking forward to seeing my brother and his wife, who got married 2 years ago, and now live with mother in our family home. I bought the souvenirs they requested and drove back home, excited for what I was sure would be a fun holiday season. But then, what was going on here? When I got home, something felt off. Even from outside, the atmosphere seemed stagnant. It was as dark as a house that had been abandoned for years. When I walked in, the air felt even heavier. I noticed that Mother lacked her usual energy. She had always been such a cheerful and lively person. Looking at the three of them, it seemed that Mother was doing all the cleaning and cooking. "Mother, are you okay? Can I help?" I asked. "It's all right, Naomi. You've come home after so long. You must be tired from the long drive," she replied, not letting me assist her. Yet she was doing strenuous housework like lifting heavy items. Despite this, my brother and Lily, my sister-in-law, just ignored her. Even when Mom was working right in front of them, they continued playing their games. They even asked her to bring them tea while she was working. It was total madness. "Hey, Mom, are you really okay? Should I talk to my brother for you? Maybe there are things you're having trouble saying." "It's fine, really. You don't have to worry about anything. Just relax. You're home, after all. Your bed is ready in the guest room. You could even take a nap if you want," she insisted. No matter how much I asked, Mom wouldn't tell me anything. I thought there was nothing I could do until mealtime came as a surprise. The living room was filled with Mom's special dishes, including many of my favorites. Each dish had a nostalgic taste, lifting my spirits instantly. "Wow, Thank you. I've missed Mom's home cooking so much. Wait, what? Mom was nowhere to be found in the living room. Incredibly, she wasn't coming in from the kitchen. Mom, what's wrong? Aren't you coming in? If there's still something to prepare, I can help you. Puzzled, I went to check in the kitchen, and there was Mom, eating standing up. No chair, just eating alone in the cold kitchen. Mom, why aren't you joining us? Why are you eating here? This is how it always is, so it's fine. But I made plenty, so make sure to eat. I'd like to think my cooking hasn't gone downhill, she said, looking sad. Meanwhile, in the living room, my brother and his wife were eating without a care for Mom, watching TV and chatting away. I couldn't help but feel bewildered. Hey, what's going on, bro? Sister-in-law, why is Mom eating in the kitchen? Doesn't that strike you as strange? Well, Mom has her issues too. You wouldn't understand because you don't live with us, my brother replied nonchalantly. Exactly, my sister-in-law added. As you age, your knees start to hurt, and sitting can become painful. You probably wouldn't know unless you live with her. Sometimes it's easier for her to stand. Sitting can make it worse. They responded as if this were the most natural thing in the world. I found their attitude odd, but I couldn't find the words to object. Indeed, it's been 2 years since I last saw Mom. We haven't been in touch often, so there could be circumstances I'm not aware of. So, I backed off at that moment, but as I observed more closely over time, I realized something was off with Mom. To be precise, something was off between my brother, his wife, and Mom. They didn't try to engage Mom in conversation. They acted as if she wasn't there at all. It was as though only I could see her. Then again, my brother and his wife have only been married for 2 years. They've been living with Mom since their newlywed days, so they probably haven't had much alone time. Maybe they're still in that lovey-dovey honeymoon phase and want to stay absorbed in their own little world. That could be one way to look at it. And it's not like I, who isn't usually around, can dictate how often they should be conversing with Mom. With those unsettling thoughts swirling in my mind, I retired to bed that night. However, the real shock came later. In the middle of the night, I woke up needing to use the restroom, only to find Mom asleep in the chilly hallway by the front door. Despite being covered with several blankets, she was shivering noticeably in the cold. Mom, what are you doing out here? Why are you sleeping in the hallway? I exclaimed. It's nothing new. Don't worry about me, she replied softly. No way, I can't just leave you like this. Even though we don't live together normally, I can't ignore it. Despite the late hour, I insisted on taking Mom to the guest room where I was staying. Together, we sought warmth and comfort for the rest of the night. The next morning, I confronted my brother and his wife about what had happened without hesitation. You don't talk to Mom. She does all the housework. She's eating standing up in the kitchen. And why was she sleeping in the hallway? But instead of showing remorse, my brother just grinned. It was my sister-in-law who uttered something shocking. Well, it's because Mom is always causing trouble. It's her punishment, right? That's exactly what I'm saying. Punishment. What do you mean? When you accumulate too many nuisance points, there are consequences. At 5 points, meals are eaten in the kitchen. At 10 points, you handle all the chores yourself. At 20 points, you sleep in the hallway. Right now, our dear mother-in-law has racked up a whopping 200 points, so she only has to endure it a few more days. What does that even mean? Isn't that terrible? And what do you mean by nuisance? I fired my questions hastily. My sister-in-law responded in a casual tone. What counts as a nuisance? Well, like when the food doesn't taste to our liking. For us, working dual-income earners, that's the worst. It's really disappointing to come home after a long day, looking forward to a good meal, only to find it's not tasty. What? Just cook your own food then. Naomi, you don't understand. We're the ones working outside, right? Do you know how much of a hassle it is to cook? That's true, Naomi. My mother-in-law doesn't work, so the least she can do is cook. It's really inconvenient to have an unproductive person at home. Exactly. We're out there working, and she's just at home all day. Quite the life, isn't it? Brother, aren't you being a bit harsh? Mother raised us by herself after Dad passed away. She worked and managed all the housework. She took care of us. Isn't that just a parent's duty? Yeah, that's it. My brother and his wife burst into laughter. Seeing their reaction, I realized there was no use in arguing further. So, I calmly stated, I see how you perceive it. Understood. Then I will fulfill my duty as a daughter. With determination, I started packing Mother's belongings. Her possessions were noticeably fewer than when I last saw them 2 years ago, which saddened me deeply. Despite my emotions, I held back tears, completed the packing, and assisted Mother, who kept apologizing, into my car. My brother and his wife observed with smirks on their faces. Finally, they're taking the burden away from us. Score. This house is ours now, Kevin. Let's enjoy it from now on, my brother remarked gleefully. I ignored their celebration and drove off with Mother, heading home. A few days later, after the New Year's festivities had ended, it was back to work. Then, a frantic call from my brother came through. Hey, nothing's arrived. What's going on? Really? After what you did to Mom, did you expect things to go on as usual, little brother? Do you understand your actions? What are you talking about? I didn't do anything wrong to you. True, you did nothing to me. But what about Mom? Think about it. With that, I hung up on him. It wasn't long before my sister-in-law called. What the? I just read your email. Why are you saying you're cutting ties with us? Explain yourself. Explanation. Cutting ties means ending our business relationship. How many years have you been working that you don't understand that? Are you still functioning in society? Wait, that's not what I meant. Don't insult me. Why does our company have to be cut off? Are you seriously asking that? Considering recent events, are you sure you're fit for this professionally? Do you even remember what happened a few days ago? With that, I ended the call. Truth be told, I work at a major company. My brother freelances for us, handling occasional writing tasks. While it felt strange to cut ties with family, there are plenty of other writers available. As for my sister-in-law, her father's company subcontracts with ours, and my department oversees their contract. Ending our business relationship with them was a straightforward decision. After handling the calls, I took a deep breath to steady myself. Then I sent both of them the same message. You both mistreated Mom. As her daughter, I will fight to protect her. Anyone who harms Mom is my adversary, and I won't hold back. Despite the circumstances of how you met, my sister-in-law visiting our company and my brother seeking more work from me, did you really think it was acceptable to treat Mom so poorly? I hate to say it, but I've been supporting both of you since you met. That ends today. They both seemed to read the message promptly and replied hastily. I haven't forgotten. I treated you better than any brother would treat his sister. I even prepared the guest room nicely for the New Year's celebration. I couldn't leave that to Mom. I also had Mom-in-law make your favorite dishes. Naomi, are you going to forget that kindness? After reading their messages, I replied, you couldn't leave it to Mom. You had to take charge. How dare you disrespect the woman who raised me with such love? Both of you disgust me. Brace yourselves. Ultimately, I stopped assigning work to my brother. There were plenty of others who were more reliable and efficient than him. Without our family ties influencing my decisions, there was no reason to prioritize him. One day, a colleague who was unaware of my relationship with Kevin asked, Hey Naomi, Kevin Ryder hasn't been active lately, right? Is he not taking on our work anymore? Yeah, he told me he's not interested in our projects anymore and asked me to stop sending them his way. So I guess we can just let him be. Well, that's odd. He doesn't seem to have any notable skills, yet he's straightforward. I wonder how he'll manage without our projects. I see what you mean. He was a bit of an odd character, wasn't he? Exactly. He misses deadlines, acts entitled, and he's overly aggressive in price negotiations. If we don't have to work with him anymore, it's a relief. That's how my brother appears from an outsider's perspective. When I stopped assigning him work, he mentioned that 90% of his income came from our company, so he must be in a tough spot now. With his attitude and skill level, finding new work won't be easy for him. Well, let him struggle. It's of no concern to me. It seems his wife, my sister-in-law, received a serious reprimand from her father after he learned about her treatment of Mom. Her father contacted me in a panic. I will disown my daughter, so please, I beg of you, let's keep our relationship intact. If there are any other conditions, I will accept them. He's the president of a company we subcontract with. I couldn't ignore his plea after hearing that. So, I laid down a condition. In that case, I want your daughter and my brother to vacate our house immediately, and she must sincerely apologize to Mother. Additionally, she needs to provide suitable compensation in the divorce settlement. The president promptly conveyed this to my sister-in-law, but she seemed resistant. Why should I apologize? Living with that old woman is stressful enough. Dad, you need to assert yourself more. You're being pathetic. Given this attitude, I decided not to renew the contract. While I felt sympathy for the president, it felt like karma. Since my brother and his daughter-in-law got married, he had been providing unrealistic estimates. He was tough in negotiations but struggled with deadlines and communication. If he hadn't been family, I would have ended the business relationship much earlier. Moreover, he raised such a daughter-in-law. There was no reason for me to go out of my way to assist him. As a result, my brother and his wife found themselves in a tight spot. According to local acquaintances, they appeared to have moved out of their home at some point. The house originally belonged to our parents, my brother, and me, and it was spacious enough for 4 people or just the 2 of them. Utility bills must have been a burden. According to reports from friends, they were seen in an apartment without basic amenities like a bathroom or toilet. It seemed they were facing significant challenges without steady employment, but that was no longer my concern. Even if they were to suddenly apologize, I had no intention of forgiving them whatsoever. On the other hand, in stark contrast to them, Mom has been steadily regaining her energy. She sleeps in a comfortable bed at my place and enjoys her meals in a cozy environment. She no longer strains herself with household chores and can relax on her days off. After months of this new routine, she's returned to her vibrant self. I was mistaken before. I convinced myself that your brother and his wife were right. I thought I had to comply because I wasn't good enough. Naomi, thank you for rescuing me. No, I should apologize for not realizing it sooner. I'm sorry for letting you suffer, Mom. From now on, please inform me immediately if anything happens. We'll make up for the past by living happily. Lately, Mom has started making friends in the neighborhood. She finds the unfamiliar city exhilarating and loves exploring it. Seeing Mom happy like this brings me immense joy. Moving forward, I'm committed to showing my gratitude to the woman who raised me. That's the firm resolution I've made. My name is Avery. I'm a 62-year-old housewife. 2 years ago, my husband, who I had been married to for many years, passed away suddenly due to an illness. Now, I live a modest life, managing the inheritance he left me. I have 2 sons, both of whom are married. When my eldest son, Henry, got married, he and his wife offered to live with me. I told them, I appreciate your concern, but I'm still fit and fine on my own. I don't want to be a burden to you newlyweds. But Henry insisted, I can't bear the thought of you being alone. As the eldest son, it's my responsibility to take care of you. Please don't worry about being a nuisance. And so, we ended up living together. Henry's wife, Rhea, is very young, 9 years younger than Henry, only 23. At first, I worried if such a young girl could handle being a wife, but she was the one Henry chose. I found no reason to object to their marriage, so I accepted it. When we decided to live together, I asked Henry, is Rhea okay with living with me? Won't a young girl like her dislike living with an old woman like me? Henry reassured me, saying, it's fine. Rhea is kind. She'll get along with you. Besides, having you around will help us with the housework. He was adamant about us living together. I couldn't find a reason to object after hearing that. Sure, I'm getting on in years, and it's too late to start worrying when something happens. Thinking that it'd be more reassuring than living alone, I gratefully accepted Henry's proposal. After we had been living together for a while, there was a time when I asked Rhea, sorry to ask, but could you bring in the laundry? I'm going out to get groceries for dinner. Up until then, I hadn't often asked her for anything, but that day I had unavoidable errands to run before shopping, so I decided to ask her. However, Rhea retorted, why do I have to do it? I'm busy right now. You should bring it in before you go, shouldn't you? She seemed occupied playing a game on her smartphone. Even before that, she hadn't helped with any household chores, but I chose not to say anything out of consideration. However, seeing her just lying there playing her game that day, I said a bit more firmly, if it's just a game, you can play it later, right? Could you please help out a bit? Rhea, looking annoyed, grumbled, you're always nagging. Whoever's free should do the chores, right? You could bring it in before shopping. You're really annoying. With a glare at me, she went to the balcony to bring in the laundry. I was taken aback by her rudeness, but I thought it wouldn't do any good to say anything more and upset her further, so I left the house as it was. After that day, Rhea began to harass me. Ignoring me became a daily occurrence. When she didn't like the food I cooked, she would say to Henry, I can't eat this. Hey, let's go out and eat. Just the 2 of us. And they would go out to eat, leaving me behind. Henry did try to consider my feelings, saying, Think about Mom too. She went through all this trouble to cook. But when Rhea was in a bad mood, all he could do was say, "Sorry, Mom. We're going to eat out today," and follow Rhea's orders. Rhea never did any housework, no matter how much I asked. Instead, she said, "You're not working, right? Aren't you ashamed to rely on Henry for everything at your age? It's normal for you to do the chores, isn't it?" She acted as if it was completely natural for me to do all the housework. Rhea accused me of not working, but she wasn't working either. She felt superior because she was supporting Henry, who was working. I hadn't told Rhea, but I wasn't unemployed. I had a little income from managing the apartment my husband left me. I also contributed to the household expenses, so I wasn't completely dependent on Henry. But Rhea seemed to think that because I wasn't working outside the home, I didn't have any income, and Henry was footing all the bills. Once, when I was cleaning, Rhea shouted at me, "Can't you clean a little quieter? That's noisy." I was just vacuuming normally, but Rhea was on a phone call and was complaining about me to the person on the other end, saying, "Hello, sorry about that. Yeah, it's Henry's mom. She's really noisy, isn't she? She should be able to do the housework quietly at this point." Even I was annoyed, and I told Henry about what had happened that day when he came home from work. "You know, I'm not saying you have to do everything, but Rhea hasn't been helping at all with the housework. Not only that, but I got scolded just for vacuuming. It's normal to share chores, and I do my part, but I can't handle doing everything alone, especially when I get complaints," I told him. Henry replied, "I'm sorry, I really am. I don't think Rhea means any harm. Maybe she was just in a bad mood today. I'll tell her to help out a bit more, so please cut her some slack today." But he didn't really take the matter seriously. Even so, I hoped that Henry would talk to Rhea, and I decided to watch how things unfolded without saying anything more. Half a year passed, and Rhea's attitude remained unchanged. She didn't even bother to pretend to help with the housework. I was utterly exhausted from managing all the chores for 3 people and constantly trying to accommodate Rhea. During this time, my second son, Lucas, happened to mention, "Mom, your birthday's coming up, right? Since Henry and Rhea will likely celebrate it on the day itself, why don't we celebrate it today? Renly also has a present for you, so let's go out for dinner." I accepted the invitation gladly. Lucas and his wife lived in an apartment about 30 minutes away from our house, so we didn't get to see each other often. Renly, Lucas's wife, was always kind and gentle, showing me a lot of care. When Lucas invited me, I replied without hesitation, "I'd love to, of course I'll go." That evening, after preparing dinner for Henry and Rhea, I joined Lucas and his family for dinner. They had reserved my favorite restaurant and surprised me with flowers and a gift bag for my birthday. It was a delightful evening, and I couldn't contain my happiness, saying, "Ah, this is so refreshing. It's been a long time since I've felt this happy." Moved by my words, Lucas asked, "Has something been bothering you with Henry? When you say it's been a while since you felt happy, it concerns me. Have things been tough for you lately?" Although I hadn't planned to complain, I explained that I was managing all the housework because Rhea wouldn't help, and how I had been scolded for being noisy and spoken to harshly. Lucas, exchanging glances with Renly, spoke up, "Mom, you don't have to endure this if it's difficult. You have income from the stocks and apartment rents Dad left behind, right? You're only staying with them because Henry wanted it that way. But if Rhea treats you badly and Henry doesn't support you, you shouldn't have to live like this. If it's hard for you to say it, I'll intervene." Renly added, "If you feel lonely living alone, we can live together. I love you very much, so please don't hesitate." Their words moved me deeply, and I felt tears welling up. I expressed my gratitude and decided to persevere a little longer, reassured by their support. "Thank you, but I'll keep trying. They're my precious family after all. I truly want to find harmony with Rhea," I replied. Returning home that night, I noticed the dishes they had used were still in the sink. With a sigh, I began to clean up but stopped myself, thinking, "I always do this. It's only fair they do it tomorrow morning." So, I left the dishes as they were and retired to bed. The next morning, as I prepared breakfast, Rhea came into the kitchen. While cooking, I greeted her, "Good morning, Rhea. I'll handle breakfast. Could you please wash the dishes from yesterday?" Rhea ignored my request and instead settled on the couch, engrossed in her smartphone. Frustration bubbled up within me at her dismissive attitude, and I couldn't help but raise my voice. "It's basic courtesy to clean up after yourself." In her usual manner, Rhea retorted, "I've told you countless times, is it that your job, mom-in-law? You know the saying, he who does not work, neither shall he eat. You eat every day, so you should do the housework. Henry hurried into the room upon hearing our exchange, looking concerned. What's going on so early in the morning? Are you two arguing? He asked, his brow furrowed in confusion. With a sigh, I explained to Henry, I simply asked Rhea to wash the dishes from yesterday. I was just stating the obvious. Upon hearing my reply, Henry muttered, seriously, this early, and headed to wash his face, clearly irritated. But I couldn't hold back any longer and snapped, it's not just about this morning. Every single day, I'm the one doing all the housework, everything including yours. Do you realize how exhausting that is? At the very least, you could wash your own dishes. My outburst, rare for me, startled Henry. I'm sorry, I'll take care of it, he said hastily, moving to start on the dishes. However, Rhea interjected, why should Henry, who works outside, have to do that? You depend on Henry, so it's your responsibility, mom-in-law. She stopped Henry's hands, clearly dissatisfied with the idea of him doing chores. Then she turned to me and said, you're living off a pension like a pauper, causing trouble. Get out of this apartment. That was the last straw for me. Why should I leave my own home? This house is in my name, I retorted to Rhea. Turning to Henry, I confessed my true feelings. Rhea seems to have it all wrong, but you understand, Henry. It's you two who should leave. I can't bear living together anymore. I've reached my limit. Rhea looked visibly surprised and asked, what do you mean? How can a jobless mother-in-law own a house? Aren't you relying on Henry? I clarified, I am the landlord of this apartment. I don't rent. This apartment belongs to me. When Henry's father passed away, he left me stocks, apartments, and land. I manage these assets and generate enough income to support myself. I've never depended on Henry financially. Even after we started living together, I covered most of the utilities and food expenses. Rhea was speechless, turning to Henry for confirmation. So we've been living without spending much money, she queried. Henry simply nodded in response. I chimed in, while Henry may have wanted to provide for you, Rhea, he couldn't possibly manage all aspects of my financial life, taking you out to eat, shopping, and such. Henry himself isn't earning that much yet. At that moment, Rhea seemed to grasp the seriousness of the situation. Her demeanor changed, her face paling as she said, I'm sorry, mother-in-law. I didn't realize, and I've been disrespectful. Please forgive me. Realizing that her comfortable living arrangement could be at risk if we parted ways, Rhea continued to apologize repeatedly in a flustered manner. Understanding their realization, I reassured them, I'm not saying I will forgive you. We're family after all, but continuing to live together isn't feasible. We need to address this. You both should find a place to rent and live on your own. Henry reacted urgently to my suggestion. I worry about you, Mom. From now on, Rhea and I will pitch in with the housework. I just don't want you to be alone. However, I reassured him, I'll be fine. If you're that concerned, I can stay with Lucas and his family. They offered when we went out for dinner recently, knowing I might be uneasy about living alone. Initially, I wanted to give it more time living with you two, but now I see it's not feasible. It might inconvenience Lucas, but I'll be closer to them. Henry seemed to grasp my resolve, simply saying, I understand, without further comment. In contrast, Rhea retorted, so you're abandoning us even though we've been taking care of you. Her tone blamed me. Recognizing arguing would be fruitless, I chose not to respond. Within a month, Henry and Rhea secured a new place and moved out. Given their budget, they could only afford an older, smaller apartment. Rhea, who had never worked previously, reportedly took up a part-time job to make ends meet. Henry confided that Rhea frequently complained about managing household chores in her job. Their life seemed fraught with continuous arguments, and Henry appeared utterly exhausted. Henry continued to reach out, pleading, if only you would forgive us, we want to live together again. Yet I have firmly decided not to revisit that chapter of my life. After Henry and Rhea moved out, I relocated to Lucas's home. Despite my insistence that they needed to accommodate me, Lucas expressed, having you here really helps, Mom. Renly also wants you to stay. She's eager to learn your cooking. Thus, we made the decision to live together. Since then, Lucas and Renly have assured me, feel free to speak up if something bothers you. We'll manage chores together, ensuring we don't inconvenience each other. Nowadays, I spend my time cooking alongside Renly, pursuing my hobbies, and simply enjoying a fulfilling life. I am genuinely content. Going forward, I strive to maintain this happiness without compromise. Hey, some more packages arrived today, Hugo called out. What's in them? I asked. Oh, just some fishing gear. A colleague at work invited me to go fishing, so I bought some new stuff. Fishing gear? I felt uneasy seeing my husband Hugo's excitement. Didn't you buy fishing gear when we first got married and never used it? I was too busy to go, but that old gear is outdated. If I'm going, I need new stuff. I see. Is there a problem with that? Hugo's tone became defensive. It's not that, but my colleague was kind enough to invite me. I can't just say no. I have work, you know. I can't dwell on sentiment like you do. I understood what Hugo was saying, but it was hard to believe we were a couple sharing the same sorrow when he seemed so happy, like nothing had happened. I'm Cynthia, 33 years old, and we've been married for 6 years. Hugo was making these fishing plans just 2 months after our daughter passed away. I still couldn't get over my grief, but I couldn't understand how Hugo seemed so unaffected. My father-in-law, Wilson, passed away in our 2nd year of marriage. He adored his granddaughter and loved her more than anything. I wonder if they're together in heaven now. That's the only thought that comforts me. Before he died, Wilson told me, don't let Hugo and your mother-in-law Rachel handle the money. I realized after getting married that Hugo and Rachel are big spenders. They spend without thinking if they have money. That's why Wilson always managed the finances. Wilson was a gentle soul, always looking out for me. Having no family of my own, he was like a real father to me, and his death hit me hard. Our daughter, Laura, was born a year after our marriage. She was such a bright and cheerful girl, always bringing light into our lives. Mom, everyone's so jealous of my packed lunch. I bet it's the best in preschool. Then Mom will have to try even harder. Mom, can I ask for a little favor? What is it? Can you make more food for my next packed lunch? I want to eat more. Can you eat that much? I won't leave any, I promise. Okay, I'll do it. The following month, Laura's preschool teacher quietly told me something. There was a child in class who never had a mom and whose dad was too busy with work to make a packed lunch, always bringing just a supermarket sandwich and an apple. Laura had been sharing her packed lunch with this child. Laura's packed lunch is more than I can eat, so please help me eat it, she would say, splitting it in half. Hearing this, I was so proud of Laura. Such a kind and wonderful child. Every expression of Laura's, her angry face, her crying face, and her brightest smiles, were all treasures to me. And then one day, that treasure was suddenly gone. The night before, Laura went to bed as usual, just a bit earlier than normal. I'm sleepy, she said, but I just thought she was tired from preschool. After watching Laura start to breathe softly in her sleep, I left the bed. Usually Laura and I sleep together. After Laura fell asleep, I cleaned up dinner, took a shower after Rachel did, finished cleaning the shower room, and by the time I returned to the bedroom, it was almost midnight. Hugo was away on a business trip that night. Laura was lying quietly in bed. I thought she was sleeping well, but as I was about to get into bed, I noticed something was wrong. I couldn't hear Laura's breathing. What? I reached out to touch Laura's cheek. It was noticeably colder than usual. Laura, what's wrong? Laura was completely unresponsive. I couldn't understand what was happening, but I knew I had to call an ambulance. I jumped in with Laura, clutching her cold hand. As soon as the paramedics saw her, I noticed a grim expression on their faces. One of them began as they rushed her to the hospital. Laura, you'll be okay, right? You'll get better once we're at the hospital, right? I repeated these words to myself, desperately hoping they were true. But when we arrived, the first thing the doctor said was, I'm terribly sorry, but she's already gone. I became frantic, begging the doctor to examine Laura over and over. It couldn't be true. She was fine before bed. The cause was unknown. These sudden events can happen even with small children, the doctor said. I had heard such things before, but never imagined it could happen to my own child. Laura and I had only lived together for 4 short years. I thought we had decades ahead of us. I couldn't believe she was suddenly gone. Overwhelmed, I panicked and passed out. When I woke up, Hugo and Rachel were there, having been notified of what happened. I realized I had forgotten to call Rachel when I left the house. Where's Laura? I hoped it was all a bad dream, but Hugo gestured that she was gone. How can this be? Neither Hugo nor Rachel said anything, but their eyes seemed to confirm my worst fears. For a while, I was almost catatonic. I cried looking at Laura's things, cried watching her favorite cartoons, and cried remembering her in everything I did. At first, Hugo didn't say anything, but gradually he began to sigh audibly and mutter, "She's so morbid." Rachel too started to nag me. "Hey, how long are you going to be in a daze? Housework is Cynthia's job, isn't it? Could you please get it together?" "I'm sorry," I said, knowing I shouldn't be like this. But my heart was heavy and I just couldn't function as efficiently as before. Yet, as they say, time heals. About 6 months later, I started to manage the daily routines normally again. Hugo did cry a bit at the funeral, but he was never what you would call a doting father. He preferred playing games over spending time with Laura, which is why she wasn't very attached to him. Maybe Hugo wasn't as heartbroken because he didn't feel much of a connection as a parent. But who else will mourn for Laura, our daughter who only lived for 4 years, if not her parents? About a month after Laura's death, Hugo returned to his usual spendthrift self, enjoying shopping and browsing the web. When Laura died, both Hugo and Rachel looked at me as if it was my fault, like they were silently blaming me. But they didn't say anything, probably because they weren't as heartbroken about her absence as I was. I didn't expect them to grieve the same way, but I wish Hugo, as a parent who lost a child, would have been more supportive. Rachel, on the other hand, went back to her routine within a week. She resumed shopping, going out with friends, and laughing as if Laura had never existed. When Laura was born, Rachel frowned upon seeing her face. "She looks more like Cynthia than Hugo. We can't expect much from her future," she would say. She often ignored Laura and seemed reluctant to interact with her, probably not feeling any special affection. She didn't shed a tear at the funeral. Their attitudes have always been a point of contention for me. Almost a year passed since Laura's death, and seeing Hugo and Rachel happily shopping, I felt an indescribable frustration. They never talked to Laura's picture. How could they act so normally? It seemed like we couldn't understand each other at all. Then one day, Hugo and Rachel suggested we go out together. "Where are we going?" I asked. "How about somewhere with fresh air to change our mood?" Hugo suggested. "Cynthia, you've been just going between home and the supermarket since Laura passed. That's why you're so down." "I've been worried about you too, Cynthia," Rachel added. "You've been so down." "Worried, you, Rachel?" "Of course. Cynthia is the wife of our dear son. I've been trying hard for your sake." I couldn't fully believe that, but a part of me felt a little happy to hear it. "How about hiking for a change?" Hugo continued. "Going somewhere with fresh air might lift your spirits. I want you to feel a bit better." "You really thought that?" "Of course, I'm your husband. It's natural to worry about my wife." "But you didn't seem that down." I was holding it together. If I got down too, the house would become too gloomy. "So let's go hiking." I wondered if they really cared, but it was hard to believe. "Laura would want you to be happy, Cynthia. Think of this as a tribute to her," Hugo said. That moved me. I knew Laura wouldn't want me to cry forever. That's something I've always known in my head. "But I've never hiked before," I said. "Don't worry, even I can climb it. It's more like a light hike," Hugo reassured me. "Well, if Hugo and Rachel insist." "Great, I'm looking forward to it." So I agreed to go hiking with Hugo and Rachel. We drove to the foot of the mountain and started our ascent. It was a sunny day and many people were around, which felt reassuring. But as we reached the midway point, the crowd thinned, despite being told it was a beginner's course. I was surprised by the roughness of the terrain, yet Hugo and Rachel walked with ease, familiar with the area. "Hey, let's take this path," Hugo suggested. "Ha! Yeah, it looks less crowded. Let's go that way," Rachel agreed. "But shouldn't we follow the path everyone else is taking?" I asked, feeling uneasy. "It's fine. I've been here before and know the way. This path is straightforward, and you can't get lost," Hugo reassured me. "If Hugo says it's okay, then it must be," Rachel added. "Trust me, there's a really scenic spot just ahead, Cynthia. You'll be amazed." Before finishing his sentence, Hugo started walking down the path, followed by Rachel. Reluctantly, I followed them, but the further we went, the more rugged the path became, almost like a trail for animals rather than a proper path. "Wait, are you sure we're on the right path? Can we really get through here?" I asked, my concern growing. "Don't worry, we'll reach a wider path soon. Just keep up," Hugo said confidently. Hugo and Rachel continued, seemingly sure of themselves. Rachel, now 60, was surprisingly nimble, walking more effortlessly than I was. Soon they were far ahead, their figures intermittently visible through the dense foliage. "Wait, don't leave me behind here," I called out. Hurry up. We'll run out of daylight. Hugo's voice echoed from the distance. I hurried, but couldn't catch up. Their heads, once visible, were now out of sight. Hugo, Rachel, I called out in fear, but no reply came. As I moved forward, I lost sight of them completely. I didn't know which way to go. What should I do? I was lost, the words stranded, echoing in my mind. This can't be happening. Maybe I should have stayed put, thinking Hugo would come back for me. But as time passed, neither Hugo nor Rachel appeared. There was no sign of anyone approaching. Knowing I couldn't just stand there, I started walking again, filled with fear. My anxiety grew as I realized I couldn't tell which way was which. I decided to retrace my steps, but even finding my own tracks on this unmarked path was a challenge. I felt like I was getting deeper into the wilderness. Panicking, I stumbled several times, each fall draining more energy. Soon, the surroundings began to darken, and my anxiety intensified. If night fell, I wouldn't be able to descend. The temperature dropped as evening approached. It was late March, but the nights were still cold, especially in the mountains. What would happen if I had to spend the night here? Exhausted, I collapsed against a large tree. I can't go on. I voiced my despair. Thoughts of this being the end of my life crept in, my consciousness fading. In my dimming awareness, I heard a voice I had longed to hear. Mom, Mom. Shocked, I opened my eyes. There was my dear Laura. Laura, is that you? Laura smiled at me. Ah, I must be in heaven, I thought hazily. I reached out to hug Laura, but she seemed to slip through my arms, flying away. Laura, Mom is over here. Laura turned and started running. Wait, I reflexively stood up to follow Laura, feeling strangely energized despite my earlier exhaustion. This couldn't be the real world, but if it meant holding Laura again, I didn't care if it was a dream. When I thought of that, I naturally felt motivated. I felt invigorated and chased after Laura. Laura, wait, I called. Laura turned back, smiling. It felt like playing tag with Laura, a joyful feeling. Before I knew it, I had reached the foot of the mountain, and Laura was gone. Laura, where are you? Laura was nowhere to be seen. Had I just seen an illusion? Then someone shone a flashlight on me. Are you okay? I got lost on the trail. Are you hurt? Thank you, I'm fine. My family must be waiting for me. I headed down to the parking lot at the foot of the mountain, but our car wasn't there. Had Hugo and Rachel left without me? No way. As I stood there dumbfounded, I saw a faint image of Laura where her car should have been. Laura. I ran towards her, but my body passed right through. I couldn't embrace her. Laura looked sad, as if she wanted to tell me something. I felt she had a message for me. Then I realized something was very wrong. If we had been separated, they would have reported me missing. The area should have been in an uproar, but no one seemed to be looking for me. The parking lot was silent and deserted. Did Hugo and Rachel not even try to find me? What does this mean? Laura must have appeared to show me this. I went to the station and took a train home. I noticed people staring at me curiously, but I was too preoccupied to care. I quietly opened the door and peeked inside. I could hear Hugo and Rachel's voices, unnaturally cheerful. I sneaked into the next room and observed them through a gap in the sliding door. They were drinking and laughing, unconcerned that I hadn't returned. We did it. No more of her depressing face. Hugo said, Wonder how she's doing now, shivering in the mountains. Just thinking about it makes me laugh. Cynthia is so slow, she'll never make it back, Rachel added. It's going to be extra cold tonight. Imagine her alone and cold out there. We'll tell people she ran off with another man, then file a missing person report. When will we get the insurance money? Hugo asked. It'll take a few years before she's declared legally missing. If only her body was found, we'd get it faster. Let's say she called from the mountain. Then they'll find her sooner. My son is so clever, Rachel praised. Hearing this, I trembled with anger. I couldn't believe they had planned this. I listened to their conversation, unnoticed. I was a fool to ever think of them as family. Make sure to cry at the funeral, Hugo said. You didn't shed a tear for Laura. Well, I wasn't sad. Laura wasn't cute. She looked just like Cynthia. Rachel replied, I never wanted kids. They're just annoying. Hearing this, I burst open the sliding door. Hugo and Rachel looked at me in surprise, their expressions frozen in shock. Hugo backed up against the wall while Rachel covered her head with a throw. I realized I must have looked like a ghost covered in mud with torn clothes and scratches. I decided to play along. I'll haunt you. I declared, my voice echoing through the room. They shivered in fear. It wasn't me. Blame Hugo, Rachel yelled. What? You agreed. Mom was the one laughing about how cold it must be. Hugo protested. It's not my fault. Haunt her. Hugo pleaded. Hugo, selling out your own mother. What if I get haunted? Rachel said, terrified. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Please go to heaven. They begged, beyond reason. They must have really thought they had sent me to the afterlife. I'm still very much alive, I said, lifting my foot to show them. They looked utterly bewildered. What was your plan, leaving me in the middle of the mountains? I just wanted to fulfill your wish, Hugo stammered. You wanted to see Laura, right? I thought I'd send you to her. It was out of kindness. I was speechless. Did they really think that excuse would hold up? I heard your entire conversation, I informed them. Their faces turned even paler. Of course, I'll be divorcing Hugo. I can't stay here, not with my life on the line. Too bad you won't get the insurance money. I recorded your conversation. I'm taking it to the police. What? I'll consult a lawyer and you'll face the consequences. Cynthia's fine, right? We didn't commit any crime. I won't let this go unpunished. Perhaps it was seeing Laura that gave me strength or knowing their evil intentions, but I felt a newfound power within me. I wasn't going to lose. Rachel, still unable to believe I was alive, peeked out from under her throw at Hugo, and me, still trembling. On the contrary, I wanted to ask myself, do I look that much like a ghost? I didn't bother with their stunned faces and began gathering my belongings to leave the house. I had no destination in mind but managed to find a no-frills hotel. I was grateful for the savings I had hidden before marriage. Hugo and Rachel didn't know I had savings. They would have demanded it if they did. The next day, I visited the police and a lawyer's office. Abandoning a healthy adult in the mountains might not constitute abandonment, but intentionally leaving someone in a dangerous place was illegal. Some punishment was inevitable. My lawyer said I could claim damages for emotional distress. My recording of their conversation led to their arrest for fraud and assault, resulting in a criminal sentence. The divorce was finalized and I claimed compensation and damages. I had secretly saved money just as Wilson advised, slowly transferring small amounts from our living expenses account to another one. Even though the savings were from after marriage, all payments were made to me, leaving Hugo with nothing. I found a place to live and a job. I'll never overcome the grief of losing Laura, but I cherish the happy memories we shared. As long as I have these memories, I won't be lonely. Laura saved my life. She wanted me to live. I'm the only one who can cherish her memories. I'm not alone. Laura's smiling face is always with me. Mom, I love your smile, Laura often said. So I'll keep smiling. The smile Laura